back, awkward listeners. Before we jump in, I wanted to remind you we've joined forces with InsurTech Connect to bring 8 hours of continuing education to the 2024 ITC Vegas event in October, and Awkward Insurance will be there too, of course. For this pro focus event, you'll experience knowledgeable insights on cyber liability and emerging risks, all while banking 8 hours of CE for license renewal. Register for the ITC Vegas Pro Focus event hosted by the Risk and Insurance Education Alliance, and you'll receive an exclusive $100 discount on ITC agent ticket pricing for new registrations. This is amazing since the ITC agent ticket price is already steeply discounted for our licensed agent friends. And for Risk and Insurance Education Alliance designees, as a bonus, you'll have the opportunity to earn up to 8 more hours of designation update credit just by attending insightful sessions at the ITC Vegas conference. Visit our link in the show notes to discover more. Seats are limited, so get one while they last. Don't need CE but want to attend ITC Vegas? We've got a discount for you too. Use code 200 ITC 1359. That's 200 ITC 1359 for $200 off a new single general admission ticket. This exclusive offer is not available for ITC agent, ITC LATAM, startup, or group ticket pricing. I'd love to see all my agent friends there interacting with rising technology, providing their practical experience to startups, and ensuring that the next wave of insurance technology is truly built with the independent agent and insurance industry in mind. This type of consultancy is extremely valuable to tech professionals you'll only meet at events like ITC Vegas. So when in doubt, head to Vegas, which is where you can catch up with today's guest from ClearSpeed. Now let's get back to our season of job roles and explore the role that voice analytics plays in the insurance industry and the amazing story behind the person who moved this technology from a military application to one that could positively impact professionals in claims, underwriting, and potentially sales. Let's get started. Welcome back to Awkward Insurance. I am excited you've returned. And so let's keep exploring the ins and outs of job roles in the insurance industry. I always say that I'm excited for each episode because I usually am, but I'm really excited for today's episode. And I have one really big goal, and it's to get my husband to actually listen to an episode. And I think our guests for today are just the right people to make that happen. My husband teaches military police to be detectives, and that's like a really dumbed down version of what he actually does, because I'm not exactly sure what he does, but it's specifically in the art of interrogation and investigation. So I think today's guest will really pique his interest. So today's role and topic is going to be a very interesting one, and we'll figure out just what that role is by the end of the episode, because I'm not really sure what to call it. When I was interviewing or talking to the company reps, what do you think this job role could be? And we came up with the bionic claims adjuster, but I think there's way more to it than that. So we'll figure out what we may need to title this job role by the end of the episode. So let's go ahead and jump in. I have guests with me from ClearSpeed. I met one of their company reps, and that may not be her official title, but Sarah Terralong on the floor at InsurTech Insights 2024 in New York City while we were recording podcasts. And even though once she started talking, I really wanted to talk to her, she probably thought I was pushing her off because I just knew that 15 minutes was not going to be enough to talk about today's topic. And I needed a solo episode for it. So I felt really bad sending her away because, gosh, I really wanted to dive into the topic. But today's episode is going to be even better. So I'm happy to have with me Allison Albrecht and Nate Curtis. Welcome to Awkward Insurance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's find out where each one of you are from. I think before I started, I asked Allison, and she is from the grand old land of Columbus, Ohio. So I'm really sad that my co-host Ashley couldn't be here with me today. Allison, is that where you're originally from?
It is, yes. I was born and raised in the Buckeye State and in Columbus specifically. spent the vast majority of my life here, did go to college in that state up north, which is what we
Don't want to
refer to
mention
as
it.
that named state. Not at U of M, goodness gracious, no, but
Oh, no.
at another college in Michigan. So lived there for a couple years, and then right before I got married, moved back to Columbus. So I've been back in the Columbus area now for almost 20 years.
Nice. Awesome. And Nate, where are you from?
So I live in Spokane, Washington in the Pacific Northwest now, and I've been here for about a decade. But I actually grew up in a military family. So my father was a naval officer, and we bounced around quite a bit between Washington, D.C., San Diego. I mean, mostly those two locations, but I consider myself to be at home here in the Northwest.
Nice. My husband's a military brat too, and I don't get a lot from him in terms of his childhood. So maybe I need to pick your brain about what it was like to grow up with a military family.
It was exciting.
Well, I am so happy to have you guys here. Tell me your positions at ClearSpeed.
I'll start. We both hold the same position. We're both sales directors. I am specifically focused in the United States and really in the commercial market space with a target on insurance, some financial services as well, banking specifically. But we work with our carrier partners, our client partners, to help them understand and talk through the value that ClearSpeed can provide them within their workflows. So that's, I'm sure we might talk about my background, but my background sits largely in insurance. And so it was a natural transition to come over here and do this work. So my territory is largely kind of where I'm situated, kind of that Midwestern sphere of the United States and down to the southern parts of the United States.
Nice. Nate?
So my role is nearly identical to Allison's. We are teammates. The only difference being that my territory is focused really to the west of the Mississippi and up into Canada. So I focus a lot on the carriers that are in that region, and then also life and health insurers as well. So that's my focus at ClearSpeed.
ClearSpeed, when did it start?
Yeah, we've been as a company doing business for about 6 years now, originating, I think you mentioned it, kind of in that government sector of the world. In insurance specifically, we've really launched a lot of our efforts within the UK first. We have a little bit of a further path in the UK than we do in the US, but within the last couple years now, we've been really moving forward our client base within insurance for those past few years.
So, Allison, you mentioned that you had a background, a history in
Mhm.
insurance before coming to ClearSpeed. I just have one nagging question in my head that just popped in that was like, what was it like to leave a long-standing history in insurance and go to a startup?
Yeah, great question. I I have spent a good majority of my career in carriers. Spent about a total time of a decade with a small, or actually a super regional carrier here in the Columbus area, and then most recently a national carrier. But I've always been really interested in how we take an industry that is traditionally viewed to be maybe certainly from an outsider's perspective, at least friends and family of mine, of like, oh, you work in insurance, that's boring, that's old, that's, like traditional, that's like they don't do anything new over there, which I know is not true, right? If you're in the industry, you do see these regular enhancements, innovation that's coming. We often say, or I like to say, that the kind of negative connotation towards the insurance industry of being risk adverse is incorrect. We're really risk aware. We're aware of what's going on in our ecosystem, in the clients and the customers that we serve. And there's so much good that's going on. And so leaving that space from a carrier, being in the carrier space, is a little bit like of a moment where you're like, okay, like I'm going to go do something that's different, maybe not as, hey, a clear path forward, but super exciting. I most recently, the role that I came from was actually evaluating vendors in the carrier that I worked at. So
Oh,
I got
wow.
a ton of time, a ton of face time with a wide variety, some vendors that have been serving insurance carriers for decades upon decades, and others that started yesterday, right? So just getting that whole gamut. So really seeing what is possible. There's a really clear reason why I'm at ClearSpeed. I've seen a lot of things, and we are doing things really, really, really different here, really cool, and game changer, which I'm sure we can talk more about. But so for me, bottom line, it's super exciting. I haven't felt since I've left like any sort of, oh man, I don't know about tomorrow. It's all just excitement for how we can be part of putting forth a positive change and really drawing to the attention of everybody outside of the insurance ecosystem that we are doing things innovative and creative, and look at these technologies that we're bringing in to something that kind of the outside world views as maybe differently. So I get excited about continuing to champion that message and talk through that with folks outside of the industry.
I just had to ask that question. It was kind of nagging on me because I've seen some recent layoffs. And I know there are people that are transitioning careers, or maybe they don't know how to move their skill set from one sector of the industry to another one. And so the technology side of things is a newer prospect for some people, and it might seem scary. So I wanted to understand, was it scary? Did you think it was scary? Are you past the scary? And I think we got all of that. Nate, what was your history before joining ClearSpeed?
So I was active duty in the Navy for a number of years. I went to the Naval Academy, and out of the Naval Academy, I went through the Navy SEAL training program, and then I went into public affairs in the Navy. So I had like a whole career in the Navy before I even got into insurance. After I left active duty Navy, I went into a career with Liberty Mutual Insurance, and I spent a decade there. And I did everything from analytics to product development and innovation, and that was really where I found my niche at Liberty, was in the innovation teams doing core personal line product development, and I loved it, and I loved the people, and I thought the work was super interesting. And after about a decade, is actually ironically, so Allison, we'll go ahead and share this piece of it. Allison is a close personal friend of mine as well, and when she left Liberty Mutual, she came to ClearSpeed, and I saw that, and I reached out to her and I said, "Why ClearSpeed? Like, what?" I've been thinking about making a change myself, and a lot of the counsel that I received from my mentors is, you might be interested in joining a startup just because the pace is so dynamic and it's so different. But don't forsake your decade of insurance experience. Take that somewhere where it will be valuable to you. And
Right.
ClearSpeed is this really beautiful confluence of like being able to lean on my insurance experience and get this really like fast paced, exciting experience working for a more of a scale up startup company.
I'm having a hard time reconciling in my head you using fast paced and exciting about insurance when you came from Navy training in the Navy. So, like, how
Yeah.
fast paced and exciting is the Navy SEALs? And then when you use those same words in insurance, my brain is just like,
Right. Yeah, no, they're certainly different. Yeah, the interesting thing about insurance that I think a lot of people don't know, and certainly I didn't understand it before I left my career in the Navy and got into that space, was it is highly intellectual. It is filled with people who are extremely intelligent, very strategic, and it is a complex, regulated environment. But you're also taking a product that many people view as a commodity, just like toilet paper, gasoline, and you're having to compete for market share, and you're having to differentiate yourself, and you're having to find ways to dynamically price those products to be competitive and serve the needs of customers. And if you're up for an intellectual challenge, insurance is about as complex as it gets. And for me, that was what really drew me to it and kept me there for like a full decade. And I think if you talk to a lot of people that find themselves in insurance, that's that they find themselves there. It's not this big sexy career that just like beckons to you from 100 miles away. It's something you find yourself in, and once you're there, it's enormously interesting. And the intellectual stimulation was just wild. I really enjoyed my time working at Liberty.
awesome. I have one more question for you. What within the job description that you found at Liberty Mutual said, yes, that's it?
So I was coming from a career in the Navy where I did a lot of like, I was working for the Navy's Joint Chief of Staff. So the Navy's like most powerful military officer. He's a 4-star admiral. And a lot of the work that we did was in the PR and communication space. But I felt like I didn't really have a good kind of analytical foundation that drove a lot of the capacity I was putting towards different projects and efforts. And what I really liked about the job description I saw at Liberty was they wanted to they wanted to bring somebody into the fold that was using analytics in a really, really intelligent way to more efficiently drive the industry. That was at a time when like marketing analytics was still very new. And Liberty was kind of on the forefront of introducing that as a discipline for like the corporate structure. And I wanted to be a part of that. I just thought that's really interesting. That seems really intelligent. And I want to be part of a group that's driving that kind of like intelligent application of this new science.
Well, let's talk about clear speed. Tell me a little bit about clear speed. What is clear speed? What is the technology, or what problem are we looking to solve with clear speed?
Yeah, it's funny because you mentioned that whenever I talk about clear speed with really anybody, but certainly folks outside of the insurance industry, like if my friends and family ask me where I work, they're like instantly intrigued. Like, ooh, tell me more, right? Because it is really unique. So at the crux of what we are doing, we are working to get to trust faster. And so really everything that our technology does is on that foundational principle of trust. If you think about specific to the insurance market, if you think about kind of what carriers are essentially dealing with every single day, is they are looking for all the opportunities that they can to find information about their consumers that they can trust. And they also want to provide a process back to those same consumers that the consumers can trust. And so whether it's going through an underwriting application or whether it's going through a renewal update or through a claims process or calling in for billing or interactions with their agency partners, it really is centered around trust. And what our technology does is allows carriers to feel confident about what they're receiving, what the information they're getting from those consumers within their workflow processes. And ultimately, that allows them to focus in on the right things. So you mentioned the bionic claims adjuster maybe as the job description, but really that funnels from how do we take technology and make it about people and process improvement. So I know there's several folks that say this, but when we're talking about technology, digital transformation, innovative things in the market, innovation in general, there's a lot of focus on technology. AI is a big buzzword. How do we bring in all this technology to do better? You can bring all the technology in the world to do better things, but if you don't have the right people change management and focus on what's going on with your people, and if you don't make those transformations about people and not technology, they will fail every single time. And so what we do is we provide a tool within the workforce that allows those people that are already educated and very intelligent in the jobs that they're doing, that have the high skill levels, to focus on the right things, to focus on the things that they really need to attribute that time and effort to, and allow with a trusted result the other things that are lower risk to move through the system expedited. So what it ends up solving for is this kind of complex thing, again, back to consumers want to trust their carriers, carriers want to trust their consumers, but there is this kind of lack of that throughout the process. We bring this technology to bridge that gap. So consumers feel like they have a trusted partner in their carrier, and the carriers through this process and through using our technology feel very confident about what they're hearing and receiving from those consumers. So really anywhere where trust is needed within a process is where we come to play. We're not a one tool for one part of the process. We really are that foundation for carriers to bring forward all their goals around their consumer experience and trust.
So to conceptualize this, use cases for ClearSpeak. Give me a few use cases so that somebody listening can take everything that you just said and go, but what do you actually do?
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a couple right off the cuff I'll talk to. Anytime that we're talking to consumers is really an opportunity, right? So claims is probably one that would jump to most people's minds. So if you think about if I am a consumer and I am filing a claim, so at what the insurance industry calls FNOL, or first notice of loss, for those that maybe aren't as versed in all the acronyms that we throw out every day in insurance, but that first contact that the customer has with the carrier, let's just say maybe they are filing a claim for some sort of auto accident. At that juncture, we can insert in the process, provide our questionnaire to the consumers. The consumers answer 3 to 5 questions. We take the results of those simple yes or no question results. We evaluate the risk associated with those responses, and we return that to the carrier. That allows the carrier to understand where this person effectively goes beyond that. If they are low risk, if their responses resulted in low risk, they might receive an expedited claims process, move through to be paid faster, depending upon the carrier's workflow. they are elevated or high risk, the carrier would likely choose to keep them through the same process and follow up on what might have flagged for those higher risks. So that's one example at that claims juncture, whether it's right at that first notice of loss or later on in the process. The same thing can be true if you think about from a quote or an application standpoint. So if I'm a consumer and I am going through a workflow applying for auto insurance and I'm asked several questions along the way, we can also deploy our technology as part of that process. Again, ask those key 3 to 5 questions, depending upon what the carrier is interested in understanding, receive those responses back, and allow the carrier to understand next steps in the processing. So is this person maybe going to be able to benefit from an expedited workflow? Do they go through, the normal channels, allowing them to focus? So those are a couple examples of where we really help optimize carriers' workflow.
Okay, so a few things are going through my head. First, thank you for explaining FNOL to our listener base, because it doesn't mean F and old loss. I mean, let's clear that area. I love that. Anytime you put the 2 letters FN together and you say FNOL, it's like, what did you just say?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Were you
didn't want to be accused of the wrong acronym? That's for sure.
That was awesome. The second thing that goes through is the yes/no questions. I think Sarah kind of started in on that when we were on the floor at InsurTech Insights. And I was like, no, wait, on any given day, a different personality might show up. So we're talking about voice inflection. Maybe I'm really tired and I say no in a very unsure kind of way. Or maybe my mom brain kicked in because I can't remember which date of birth I'm supposed to spout out first. So let's talk about how accurate is the technology in detecting these different voice? And is there any kind of I guess maybe oversight is what I'm thinking, that it's like, okay, this person is maybe they're tired today. They sounded off.
Yes, I'll start and then I'll let Nate jump in too, because I think we can both kind of tag team this one. So it is not tone, inflection, stress, sediment, voice printing. It is unlike anything you've seen when we talk about voice analytics. So we are looking at vocal characteristics that are presented in the voice. And so it is beyond the layer of, I had a bad day. I said it because I was extra stressed out.
Now, wait a second. What if I binge watched Bridgerton and now I sound like I'm from Europe?
We deploy in upwards of 50 different languages and counting. So vocal characteristics exist as long as you are a human and have a brain. That doesn't matter kind of what is coming from you as far as your language or dialect, your
still
tone.
Debatable
those are not
on any given day. I'm sorry. Okay, keep going.
Fair. So that is what it is not. So to answer your question of if I was having a bad day or if I got caught in a moment, that's not what we're evaluating. We are evaluating vocal characteristics isolated very specifically to risk. And so it is not something that you can, for example, you could say very stressed out, and then the next time you say it not stressed out, and it's going to be a different result. Like we're looking at something that's undercurrent outside of that, like tone, inflection, stress, sediment. That is a very common question we get. So I would say you're probably following a very similar path to almost everybody we talk to. The first thing people jump to is, wait a minute, what happens if? So that's a very common question, because I think that's what we're used to in voice analytics. That's what we know. So we kind of jump to that. That's why this technology is so different and really, really cool, because we get beyond that. I'll let Nate weigh in on a couple of the other items that you spoke. I don't want to take too much of that answer, but that is something that we do see commonly asked, and is a good question, because that's something you would want to understand.
For sure. Those potential biases are a concern, especially when you start the conversation by saying that we get to trust faster. Well, as a consumer, can I trust that you are not interpreting my Bridgerton accent?
Yeah.
Nate, your turn.
Right. Allison explained it very well. What I think is worth emphasizing is that our invention is the ability to detect the absence or presence of these characteristics in the voice that we know to be associated with risk, that are universal. So there is a process happening behind the scenes in your body that we know is associated with risk. And this is agnostic of your state of emotional arousal, your age, your gender, your native spoken language. In the same way that I could put a stethoscope to your chest and I can hear that you have a heartbeat sounds like a heartbeat regardless of how old you are, what country you come from, what language you speak. We are able to determine these universal characteristics that are associated with risk from the shape of the voice. And we can determine that from a simple recorded yes or no response in response to a question where there's something at stake. So in the case of a claim, you're asking a question about pre-existing damage to the vehicle or something like that. Or was someone, the undisclosed operator question is a great example, was someone other than you operating the vehicle at the time of the accident? So anywhere where there is risk that we cannot see, where we have to go to the individual, the member, the customer, and we have to ascertain that information from interacting with them, ClearSpeed adds this high degree of trust and transparency around that by doing it in a way that's completely unbiased, that does not require a baseline, that is completely agnostic to your emotional state or your age or your gender. It's like a metal detector at an airport. We like to use this analogy a lot. When you walk through the metal detector at an airport, that metal detector doesn't know anything about you. It doesn't need to know anything about you. It doesn't need to know what your credit score was. It doesn't need to know what you ate for lunch today. It doesn't need to know how many people live in your house. It literally doesn't care. All it's looking for is a certain density of material that you may or may not be carrying. And then it doesn't even know if it could be a bomb or a gun, or it could be just your keys that you left in your pocket as you walk through the metal detector. All it's doing is it's alerting that TSA agent that there's something here that needs to be further investigated and followed up on. So that's why I think it's a really unique technology in that it is not a predictive model. It is agnostic, it is unbiased, and it is incredibly accurate and reliable.
The next thing that I think of is how counterintuitive it is to defer to yes no questions when we spend a lot of time training our industry to ask open ended questions in order to avoid those quick yes or no's. Like you mentioned, was somebody else driving the vehicle at the time of the accident? It's a quick yes no. Somebody can respond to that super quick rather than asking who was driving the vehicle at the time of the accident, because then well, it wasn't them, it was the other person. And they might stumble a little bit as they pull the right name out of their mouth versus a yes, no. So that was the next thing that just kind of hit my brain there. And so I think my question here is understanding some of the use cases for this technology now that it's, as you say, agnostic. It doesn't matter whether you're, I like, you jump straight to bombs. So I'm just going to go there. Whether you're carrying keys or a bomb and you're answering about your claim, what are maybe some things that insurance professionals should be educated about in this technology as they're talking to their client when they know that maybe the carrier that they're using is using ClearSpeed?
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought it back to the questions because I wanted to address that too. The questions matter a lot. And so we spend a lot of time working with our clients on the right questions to ask. And they need to be very specific, have a level of consequence associated with them. But they aren't meant to be a replacement for, the decisioning that a carrier does, right? We are not the sole determinant of whether a claim will be paid or not. So that quick question answer of, yes, it is just a yes or no about the driver is really meant, if you think about that, to get it to the right person to ask those follow-up questions, to have more discussion, to say, interesting, this flagged high risk, or interesting, this question brought a level of risk. Talk to me more about why that might have happened. Where it was someone other than you driving, those open-ended, that really empathetic led open conversation. What we are able to do is to act at that front end so that those folks that have a limited amount of time, a limited number of resources to do their job, are not spending their time on the folks who are low risk, who are, presenting correctly in that first stage. And so it isn't meant to be a replacement for the great work that happens in that open-ended discussion and that empathetic led, the work that likely your husband is training folks on how to do, how to appropriately have those conversations, how to dig deeper into discussions. We are giving a targeted direction. So our questions are also when we're asking 3 to 5, you're getting a result on each question. Now you know specifically where to focus versus kind of looking at a totality of a situation and going, this, I've got a feeling, right? A lot of claims adjusters been doing this
I
for a while. They
got
get
a
feelings.
feeling.
Yeah. Maybe they sing that when they do that, but they don't.
There's
They
a couple of times I wanted
say,
to break out in song in this episode, and that one just, it overtook.
hey, I like it. But it really provides them with a clear direction to say, okay, I now know where to focus. It is on there's something with a undisclosed operator maybe happening here, and I can take my next line of question, my next discussion with the customers in that direction. And what we find, actually, I'm glad you brought up like what consumers experience. We actually see an elevated customer experience rating for the clients that inject ClearSpeed in their workflows. And that's because you're allowing your consumers to provide you with direct information, and they are low risk. They are going through maybe an expedited process. They have a better overall experience. You mentioned earlier, hey, I just had to answer all these questions and then I had a follow-up questionnaire. We advocate for let ClearSpeed really help maybe not have to ask the 200 questions that you ask at policy inception, right? You can ask the 3 to 5, you can trust those answers, and perhaps can expedite then someone like yourself who might be a low risk through that process. So we really do see an elevated customer experience coming back as part of the workflows. Again, in the claims experience, everybody wants to get paid. So, if you can move that process through faster, it usually results in
Everybody does want to get paid. I was actually really shocked this morning. First thing I always do when I wake up in the morning is check my calendar and see if I can stay in my pajamas or if I have to get dressed. And then the next thing I do is I go to social media, right? And so I'm laying there and I see something that says I need to switch home carriers. And I know that there's a whole bunch of threads in here about who to use and whatever, but I want to know who's not going to give me trouble at the time of a claim, because that's really where it matters. I was like, okay, thank you. Can we have this discussion here now? But anyway, so I'm glad to hear you say that. Let's talk about, I think this is where I'm going to get my husband to listen. Let's talk about the origin story of ClearSpeed, if we can do that quickly, because this is a really cool story. Who wants to take it?
I'll throw it to Nate.
Yeah, I can jump in here. So the origin story is very cool. This was part of what attracted me to the company is our deep roots in the military. So our CEO, he is still a member of he's a reservist in the Marine Corps. And he and I actually both went to the Naval Academy around the same time. We were separated by about 2 years. And we have a number of folks in our company that are either former military or also still in the reserve. So we have very, very strong tie to the military. But the origin story here is we saw a need, our CEO saw a need to establish trust with forces that were working alongside US and NATO forces downrange in places like Afghanistan and Iraq. So there was a loss of life, we call it blue on green incident, where we had NATO forces that were trained with the US Marine Corps. And during a combat scenario, a Marine was killed by one of these NATO forces that we had originally thought we could trust. And it turns out that there were some complexities there and they shouldn't have been trusted. So the original application of our technology was to help screen folks in these countries, Iraq and Afghanistan, for access to US and NATO bases in places like Bagram. And so you had people who wanted to work from the local population, honest people wanted to work as electricians or plumbers or maintenance people, but we didn't have a way to quickly ascertain if we could trust those people or if they were high risk. So that was where ClearSpeed technology came onto the scene, where we could deploy this technology at scale and very quickly assess through the voice alone if there were risk factors that we needed to take into account before giving people access to that US or NATO facilities. And we actually found that there were folks who had malicious intent that were trying to gain access to the base, and those folks were screened out through the ClearSpeed product. So we needed to reach a level of accuracy sufficient for that life-saving task. And once we did, we took this technology and we repackaged it and we brought it to the financial services sector. And that's how ClearSpeed ended up in the insurance space. But the original application was keeping US and NATO troops safe and alive in real combat scenarios overseas.
Allison, is that really kind of what drew you to the company? Forget that it was a startup, but it just has Oh my gosh. It has a, see, even the military thinks insurance is cool. I don't know why everybody else doesn't.
Yeah, I oftentimes tell folks it's really awesome. One, our culture here is to answer your question of what drew me, like it's the culture. And I think that comes from working with just a high caliber of individuals here across all areas that we serve. Some of the best people I've ever worked with in my career work here. Just a team of people who have such a like strong desire to do good, and doing good in the world looks a different way to everybody, and we get to do that through a lot of different opportunities. We do good, absolutely, and still the government and security space, knowing that we have this really awesome origin story. I tell people I work with people who have done more for America in their pinky finger than I will ever be able to do for my country. It's an honor and privilege to work side by side with them. The coolest part of it is they are eager to learn and want to be part of growing and advancing what we do in insurance. And what a cool thing to be part of, where I can come into a room and someone who again has just been decorated in a lot of ways and done some really amazing things in their career can sit down next to me and say, I have a lot to learn from you. Can you talk to me about this particular subject? And finds insurance to be a space where we can do good. I mean, there's a lot of good we can do in this industry. We do good, right? Our sole purpose in insurance is to make people whole after a catastrophic loss. That's a great space to be in. We do a lot of good in this industry. It does sometimes get covered up by all the other minutia that we're in, but at the end of the day, that's what insurance is here for. And so we get to take and translate a lot of the same things that we do in that government and security spaces into the insurance world. It's a really fun space to be in. And then you start to think of like art of possible, of like, oh, where else, can we be a part of? And it really just gets to be really fun, and kind of really believing that we have something that can foundationally change the way we think about trust across a lot of industries. So yeah, it's really exciting.
It might be because I had to turn my AC off for this recording that I feel warm, but it could just be that was so warm and fuzzy. I love it. I have one more question. Do you guys get to review? Obviously, these calls are recorded for quality assurance purposes. So, do you guys get to review any of these? And if so, has there been anything just off the wall and awkward that you're just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that got caught?
To be fair, the calls themselves are probably most of them are pretty boring. It's a yes or a no, right? There's not much going on. We do have some folks who attempt some interesting things. They try to maybe pass the phone to someone else or play loud music in the background. So, most people though, it is just a yes or a no. But we do have some interesting scenarios, and I think some are more than others. But yeah, I think for the most part, people don't oftentimes know what's going on. Largely, they don't when they're taking this questionnaire. Some people start to, as the questions come up, realize they're going to be in a situation if they're answering the questions. And we actually see more than the uniqueness. We don't see a ton of that. We actually see a lot of folks withdrawing because they self-withdraw through the process. They take the questionnaire, they listen to the questionnaire and call in and say, you know what, I actually would like to either withdraw my claim or I'd like to change what I stated there, which is a great benefit, obviously, to the carriers that we're working with. And we do see high returns on that. But yeah, we don't on the regular, at least I don't. That's kind of in a different department that listens to some of those calls.
To use Nate's words, they try to change the shape of their voice. From now on, when somebody asks me yes or no questions, I'm going to have a hard time not trying to either talk in my Bridgerton accent, talk in my Peppa Pig accent. Did I say accident? Talk in my, I don't know, Seattle accent from watching too much Grey's Anatomy. I'm just going to change it all over the place and see what happens. And eventually I'll figure out how this technology works. Nate, thank you and the many service members of ClearSpeed for your service to our country. That is so appreciated. And I just love everything that Allison had to say about being able to work alongside many of you at ClearSpeed, and you guys doing more for our country than she'll ever be able to do in her pinky finger. I'm going to take that one to heart too. Same here as well. Thank you both for joining us on Awkward Insurance.
Thank you.
Our pleasure.
In the words of Nate, if you are here today, you are highly intelligent and enormously interesting. Toodles, everybody. Thanks for hanging out and listening to another Awkward Insurance Conversation.
If you haven't already, be sure to join the Awkward Insurance Facebook community. We have an amazing group of people on there.
And for more episodes, head over to the National Alliance website at scic.com. Now go forth and be awkward. Toodles!
That's awkward.